Hey everyone, welcome back to Caregiver School webinar series. This is a program that's designed to help you navigate your family's caregiving journey. Um, you can access the full Caregiver School program either through a podcast, so you search under podcasts for Caregiver School, and you'll see this picture, which is the print version of the book. You'll see this picture, and that's Caregiver School. Or you could go online to caregiverschool.com, plural. Let me show you how to do that right here. So let me just rearrange my screen here. Okay, so this is Caregiver School. It's a plural. The podcast is Caregiver singular, but the website is caregiversschool.com. You come here and you go to the student page. And on the student page, this is where you can access all of the courses. So you'll want to start off by printing out the course outline so that you can see what classes, what topics I cover. And because it's a program that's designed to, you don't have to do it in order, just do whatever you're struggling with at the time. So our last webinar, we really pretty much talked about becoming a family caregiver. We talked about the 4 journeys, and we did a little rest stop. We took some time for a caregiver, caring for the caregiver. And we also talked about the 6 essential steps, and really this should be the 6 essential tasks because they're not steps you necessarily have to do in order. And so the first step was know your role. So we talked about the various roles of being a caregiver. And today we're going to talk about task 4, which is gathering the essential paperwork. And we're going to cover this topic over the next series of webinars because there's a lot of stuff to gather. And today we're going to focus on the legal and financial, and specifically advanced directives. So you come down here, that's part 5. So we're going to scoot down here to part 5 of Caregiver School. The website is the easiest place to print these worksheets because they're obvious. On the podcast, it's easiest to listen to the program on the podcast, but you'll want to come to the website to print out the forms. They're just easier. On the podcast, they're kind of hidden in episode notes or web page. They're a little challenging to find. So today we're going to talk, there are 2 worksheets here. We're going to talk about advanced directives and the legal and financial checklist. So we're going to start today, right now, with understanding what advanced directives are and why you need them. So this would be the form that we're going to be looking at today. So we're all right, so let's just take a minute and talk about what advanced directives just generally are. I'm going to hide this because we don't need to see that. So basically, advanced directives are just what they mean. They're instructions in advance of when you'll need them. And they generally cover 2 areas. They'll cover your medical care and costs, and then your financial, so all your money and stuff. Okay. They cover 2 time frames: before death and after death. So some are documents, directives that you'll use while you're living, and then others don't go into effect until after you've passed. When advanced directives are prepared, it's required that the person be compos mentis, which means of sound mind or not incapacitated, and that they're prepared of their own free will and free of any duress or undue influence. And so usually these documents will at a minimum have to be witnessed. So usually 2 people will be signing to say, yep, they were of sound mind. This was their wishes, There was no undue influence. It was all of free will. So usually those witnesses are people that need to be, that are not party to the document. So they're not named in the document. They're two disinterested parties. Some of the documents need to be notarized. And so a notary is more of, it makes it a little bit more, it's a higher standard. It's an external, it's a notary. It's someone who is licensed by the state to notarize or witness documents. And basically, they're witnessing. And a notary will, depending on the need, they're gonna they'll be notarizing or certifying that the person who signed the documents is in fact that person. So they're going to confirm identity, and then sometimes they're going to be confirming uh, that there's understanding of what the documents, that what's being signed, that they know what they're signing. So the notary is saying, yes, this is Bob Jones. He signed it, and he knows what he was signing, and it was of his own free will, and he had the capacity to do that. All right. Usually, the form will have the pre-printed certification that the notary is certifying, and it will say, if it's just identity, sometimes it's just identity, like, yep, this was the person. I don't know what this document's about. I don't know if they understand it, but they're standing in front of me and they clearly signed it of their own free will. And then, but some will say, that they understood. So you have to read the notary statement to see what the notary is signing. Okay. So why you need them? You need them when you can't speak for yourself, because until you can speak for yourself, you can handle your affairs. So when you can't speak for yourself, or if you want someone to handle some piece of business that you don't want to do. So like my mom sometimes would say, you need to talk to my daughter about the bill, or you need to talk to my daughter about those things. So she would authorize me to handle something on her behalf. So, but these are documents that you prepare for when you can't do that. Okay. So when you can't speak for yourself. And so most of these documents are naming someone that will speak for you. And also, or if it's someone you want to have access to some of your care decisions or information. Like I would help my mom with some of her Medicare billing, because I was her medical power of attorney. I was able to have access to that information. I was able to the doctors could talk to me about some of her care. Otherwise, with privacy laws and real strict patient confidentiality, unless you have a document that the person has signed or authorized that. And if they're not able to say, yes, you can tell her, the document allows you access. So let's go over some of these. Let's see. So that's when you need them. So now let's talk about some of the things that you actually will use. And so now we'll come back to this form. And okay, come on. And let's see if we can't make it a little bigger. And okay, so I want you to print this form out yourself and really look through it. So we're going to start with documents that are before death. And generally these are the medical advance directives. So if you're a family caregiver, you're going to want to get the medical advance directives in place as soon as possible. And there are three, actually there are now four. I just learned that there are four medical directives in advance, what you'd want to put together in advance. There's a living will, which is a statement of a person's wishes or intentions for treatment they do or do not want to receive. Okay, so I do want life support. I don't want life support. I do want artificial hydration or artificial nutrition. So usually most people who do not want life prolonging or life sustaining, life support, they'll really want to have a living will. Okay. So it's a statement with specific instructions about the type of medical treatment that you do or don't want. This is a legal document. All right. There's a new document called a pulsed, and I'll show you that a little bit more in detail. That is a physician's order of life-sustaining treatment. And basically it's a living will, but it carries the power of a physician's order. It's doctor's orders. So, and I'll show you that a little bit more. A durable medical power of attorney, which is what most people think about and absolutely need, is this names a person who will speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. Okay, so this is very important because a living will just covers very specific, generally end of life situations, but the more needed document is for those small little decisions throughout. So a medical power of attorney names an agent. A do not resuscitate is something that you will only fill out at end of life. And basically it says your heart has stopped. You have in fact died. You have in fact stopped living. If you do not want to be resuscitated, which is if you're around medical personnel, they will initiate life support or life resuscitative measures unless you have a do not resuscitate in order. So this would be you'd have this just at end of life. Most of us walking around, if we suddenly had our heart stop beating and we passed away, we would want someone to start our heart and resuscitate us until they figured out why. But people who are at the end of an illness, you may not want to be resuscitated because that's just sort of the natural process. I always prefer that this be called allow natural death. So if you think of it as that 98-year-old grandmother who's got advanced Alzheimer's, if she passes, if her heart stops beating, you don't want someone trying to resuscitate her. You want her to let her go on and allow a natural death. Okay, so those are the three medical powers of attorney, medical advance directives. So let me show you how to fill those out. I'm going to show you how to find them. So I have in here, see this thing, it says caringinfo.org to find your state-specific forms. And let me see if this is a live link. Yes, it is. So that will take you to this place, okay? And it's got a ton of information. So anything you didn't understand from today that, or you have questions about, they go over through this in depth. Okay, something I forgot to do is give you my little disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. I am not a doctor. I'm not a financial advisor. So I'm only giving you general information so that you can go to the subject matter experts and get the expert advice. I'm just giving you education and showing you how to teach yourself so that when you need to prepare these, you know what questions to ask. So that link takes you to here, and there's all kinds of things. This is a website about hospice and palliative care, and it explains all of that. But you can come either here and click Advanced Directives. There's other menus, but we're going to go to Advanced Directives because what I want you to do is find your form that's state specific, because every state has different laws and regulations about who is your next of kin, who can speak for you. And so these forms are designed to be are specific to your state or territory's laws. So again, you come to this. This teaches you all these things that I'm teaching you, but just in advance. So here you'd come to download and complete your state or territory's advanced directives. So you click that. And then here you would type in your state. So I'm going to pick a state I have never done before. I'm going to say Colorado, just because then we can figure it out together. So let's see. Let's see if this will just open it. Yeah, there we go. So what I like about these advanced directives, this website and getting advanced directives from here, you can get advanced directives at the hospital, at your doctor's office. They're really, these medical advanced directives are very easy to find. But what I like about this particular website is it has these three or four very detailed instructions about how to use it, how to do it. Before you begin, action steps. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger so you can see it. Don't know how to get rid of that side thing. But before you begin, and steps to take, and it walks you through very specifically for your state, what it means. See here, part 1. Now, a living will and a durable medical power of attorney are actually two separate legal documents, but most of them combine them call them medical advanced directives. But it will have both forms, both legal documents in one form. So here, this is Colorado. So here it says part 1 is your medical power of attorney. That's where you name an agent. And then the Colorado Declaration is the state's living will. Okay. And then, and now every state, and so this walks you through who should I appoint, how should I do this. This is all the instructions ahead of time. And that's what I love about this form. Like, so you don't have to remember everything I've written. I've told you. Then what I like about this is here you fill out the form, but it tells you over here in this gray part, here, write your name here. Print the name and home address of your agent. Okay. And again, and then you can read through, my agent makes healthcare decisions for me. And so you can name you name an agent, you give their contact information. You can name a second or an alternate. Now, sometimes you have to read the wording, because you want to make sure that it says or. If the first person isn't available, then you could go to the second person, or whoever shows up can be there. So these two people, like my sister and I, were both on my mom's because she lived closer and she would be there, but I was also there, involved also. But we both didn't have to be there. One or the other could do it. All right. So just, again, read through the instructions. They'll tell you for your state, when you write that, what that means. And then it says additional instructions. And this tells you here what that means, Okay. So you fill all this out. Now here, this is part 2, which is, this is the declaration or the living will. And it says, and it's based on circumstances of if I have an injury, if I'm a persistent vegetative state, whatever. Every state, it'll be worded differently. Just read it through, and then you initial the one you want. Okay, I do, shall be withdrawn, shall be continued. Okay, you can try for a week until you figure out if it's helping, or you can stop, or I want it indefinitely. It does not matter what you choose. That's your personal choice. There's no there's no there's no right or wrong. It's a statement of your wishes, and whatever you write here, your agent has to abide by. So they may not want that to happen, but if that's what you wrote down, that's what's going to happen. Okay. And then you sign it. Now, generally, medical advanced directives only need witnesses, and they usually need 2. And again, I declare that the person who signed this document is personally known to me, so it's identity, and that she is signed in my presence, and that appears to be of sound mind and under no duress, fraud, or undue influence, and that that you didn't sign the document for them, but that you're not a physician or a healthcare provider or an employee of the patient's employee of the physician, the healthcare provider, and I have no claim, I'm not entitled to any portion of the patient's estate, which means a disinterested party. Okay. And then this, and in Colorado, they add this organ donation form that you can add, which would be something separate. Okay. And then it tells you after you fill out the form, now what do you do with it? Okay. And so that's what I love about this, the forms on this website, caringinfo.org, is because they really walk you through very step by step what you need to fill out. And then, you know, every blank tells you what to do. Okay. I saw one medical advance directives that needed to be signed before a notary, which is really unusual. And so, you know, and again, you'd have to just read what the notary was signing. And what that might have been for is because that particular advance directive might have had some other statement in it that required sort of a higher legal standard for some reason or another. Okay. So that's the medical advance directives, how to fill them out, where to find them and how to fill them out. And then in my, coming back to my worksheet, there's something that I've only learned about recently that was available, and it's called a POST. A physician's, let's see, a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. And they are portable medical orders. And these are, again, state specific. And what they are is they are basically a living will, but they carry the weight of a physician's order. So a living will is a legal document, and this POST, some states, they go by different names, and but they are doctor's orders. And so, which means that EMTs and hospitals and doctors must follow these orders, where a living will is a legal document, and they might not get followed in an immediate or a crisis because they don't know about it. Okay. And so my experience with standing orders, which that's what this would be called, a standing order. It's where a doctor writes orders that follow you and take it with you, was when I was a hospice social worker. All of our hospice patients, the medical director would sign a standing doctor's order so that medication was available should a particular symptom or circumstance arise. So if suddenly someone in the middle of the night became very nauseous or had a pain crisis, they didn't have to wait to call the doctor to get a physician's order and then call the pharmacist. We would, all the patients would have in their an emergency kit in the refrigerator that had these medications that were available if they were needed, and the doctor's orders were available. So that's my experience with standing doctor's orders. You'd really need to look into this. Again, this is through caringinfo.org. It was one of the links, so you can come to advanced directives. This is where we were before, and you can come down here where it says the POSTs. Okay. And then it talks about what they are. Okay. So you'd have to just really look to see when that would apply. Most people would not need these, but someone with a chronic condition, or and of course a terminal one, but a chronic one, where you wanted to have the same kind of treatment going forward. So again, similar to a living will, it means that it's a statement of treatment that you do or don't want to receive. But these, again, are physician's orders, and where a living will is just a legal document. A do not resuscitate is a form of a physician's order, because that a do not resuscitate needs to be signed by a medical doctor. That is a doctor's order. Again, this do not resuscitate is for end of life care. And so these POSTs cover other treatments or interventions that you may or may not want. So again, something to think about. So let's come back. So that covers the medical. So usually you don't need an attorney and they only need to be witnessed. You would want to get an attorney to fill it out or be part of it if there was any kind of dementia or any cognitive impairment, and you'd want to make sure that it was done right, or to make sure that that it's not being signed under with undue influence. And basically, you want to. It's a legal document, so you want a lawyer to fill it out if you think for any reason the document might be challenged, your authority or what's covered in the document might be challenged. Um, the one thing, let me just back up. The one thing that I would add to these medical powers of attorney under where it has additional instructions. If you want to be cremated, it's really, really helpful for your agent to put that in here because cremation is sort of an irreversible thing, and it it uh, it 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 just makes it very clear. I know of a situation where a person clearly wanted to be cremated, had prepaid for it, had done all the preparation, but then at the time, one of the children, the surviving children, um, it just felt opposed to it. Just didn't want that personally. Had a problem with cremation, and didn't want it to happen. And the funeral home wouldn't honor, even though it had been paid for, because it could be legally challenged, and they can't undo a cremation if they lose on a legal challenge. So it's best if it's here, because then it will kind of cover that. But it's just always something helpful, that if you want cremation, because again, that's after the fact. Okay, so the other advanced directives would be those that, let me come back to our worksheet here and to see. So we have medical advanced directives, and then we have the uh, legal and the financial, really, um, advanced directives. So these are the two that you would want before death, that cover before death, would be a power of attorney, which is over finances. So the medical power of attorney covers medical decisions. This is over your money and your things. And these documents you will absolutely want to have an attorney fill out because they carry a lot of weight, and there's a lot of, if they're not written properly, they can create a lot of damage and havoc. So a financial power of attorney handles a person's money and assets. They act as if they are yourself. Unlike medical power of attorney, a medical power of attorney does not go into effect until the individual can't speak for themselves. So that's why they're written in advance. When I can't speak for myself, this is my medical agent who will direct my medical care. Powers of attorney can go into effect as soon as they're signed. It just depends how they're written. And so there are three different kinds. We cover a general, a springing, which means it goes into effect at a certain date or circumstance. And then limited only covers, some of you may have experienced this, where you're closing on a house, but you can't be there. The spouse can't be there. So they sign a limited power of attorney that someone can sign for that. Okay. So this handles your finances. You'll absolutely want to have an attorney take care of this and make sure it is specific to what you want. One of the things to be aware of is if you are the medical power of attorney and someone else is the financial power of attorney, then make sure you're on the same page. I've had situations in hospice where the spouse was the medical power of attorney, but for some reason a son or a stepson or somebody else was the financial power of attorney, and they were in disagreement about spending money on care because one held the purse strings, but the other was taking care of the care. So just make sure that if these are two different people, which many times it is, a division of labor is important within families. that it's that you're coordinating, and so that the whoever's holding the purse strings is helping the caregiver. A caregiver agreement is, I go into this in depth in caregiver school, but basically it's a formal employment agreement, and it's a way for a family member to be paid to care for their loved one and it not have a negative impact on qualifying for any financial assistance such as Medicaid. Very, very important if you think your loved one will run out of money and at some point might need to apply for Medicaid or financial assistance. Every state, their Medicaid program has all kinds of rules and regulations, and they're going to watch where all the money went and how it was spent before they're going to start footing the bill for any care. So just make sure, I go into this again in caregiver school, and you'll want to talk to an attorney. And again, you'll want to use an elder law attorney, and I referenced that in here of how to find the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. These are people that work that are familiar with the needs of elder law and would be familiar with caregiver agreement. Okay. Now, so would be before death, a power of attorney and caregiver agreement. Once a person passes away, then all of these agreements are null and void, with the exception of the durable medical power of attorney, in that the medical power of attorney, that agent, has the continued authority to the proper disposition of the remains. Basically, they can handle the funeral home costs. So, and the burial. So the durable means beyond capacity or beyond, and in the case of a medical, beyond death. Okay. And again, that's just for funeral. Again, be working with, if you're handling the funeral home arrangements, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but make sure that you have a way to cover the funeral costs, and that the power of attorney who has the money will make sure that you can cover the funeral costs. There's the trusts, living trusts, guardianships, and conservatorships. Are again, you can do these. You want to set up a living trust, you could set this up ahead of time. And guardians and conservatorship is pre-deceased, and you can read through all of that. And then after death is obviously the last will and testament. And again, you're going to want to talk to an attorney about that, and make sure that you have everything that you need. Basically, a will, you'll want to have something in writing, and a will, again, best completed by an attorney, because they're going to be much more thorough. They're going to think about things that you haven't thought about. It will be legal and therefore probated or processed more quickly. But at a minimum, if you can't get to an attorney, or you don't think you can afford one, at a minimum, it needs to be in writing. Okay, but you can type it up, but it has to have an original signature, and it needs to be witnessed by two disinterested parties and not a beneficiary. So at a minimum, it should name an executor, and which would be someone that would manage the transfer of the money and the assets. So, but really, you'll want to get an attorney involved. Okay. Again, I'm going to come back to some of the financial things to think about pre-death. Is you want to think, how are you going to cover the cost of funeral expenses? Because the funeral home will want to be paid at the time that you contract with them. And so life insurance is going to wait until a death certificate is produced, which could be a couple of weeks later, and before they pay out. So one of the things you'll have to understand is that the cost of funeral and burial expenses somebody's going to need to pay that. And so out of pocket at the time. And so one of the ways is to set up a bank account that's designated as payable on death or transfer on death. And then with the idea that would be used to cover funeral home expenses, because again, they're going to need a death certificate, proof of death, before they transfer the money, but it's outside of the will, and so it will happen immediately, just like life insurance. So um, just be thinking about that those costs need to be, you need to, when you're doing your financial planning ahead of time, is, does someone have a credit card with enough availability that they could put it on a credit card until the life insurance pays out? Or, because a will may take, sometimes it will take time to probate, which just means process. Okay. So, so that covers that. I think we've covered just basically the these are the advanced directives. Then the other thing to think about would just be, what I have here is a legal and financial checklist. So as you're gathering and this is as comprehensive as I could make it, but I am sure I forgot all kinds of stuff on here. But print this out, and this just tells you, again, we're gathering documents. That's the lesson for the day: gathering legal and financial documents. And so the legal documents are the medical directives. Make sure you have a will. All right. You want to, and so this is a good checklist to have you thinking about what also you might need to find, locate, or just generally get in order. You're going to gather everything first, and then you're going to organize it. Medical documents need to be accessible because they're needed often. Every time you go to the doctor, or a new doctor or specialist, they're going to ask you to have an advanced directives. They're going to want to copy them. They're going to need them for those decisions. The financial should be in a secure but accessible location. So I want you to look through this list because it's very comprehensive. So, and then just figure out, for now, just find a way to just kind of keep it all in one place. At some point down the road, I'll teach you a cool way to organize everything. But at this stage, we're merely learning why and what key documents and resources, and then I'll show you how to organize it. So that covers what I have for today under the legal and financial. Again, Caregiver School Part 5, we go into more in depth. This caring info. Let me see if I can back up, if it'll bring me back. This caringinfo.com .org is the great place to get the forms, but also information. Always remember that you want to get your education from websites that are, say, .org or .gov, and that not .com or .net. .org and .gov are nonprofits and people that are just here to be helpful. .com are commercial sites, and so they may or may not be trying to sell you something. So just be aware of that. Caringinfo.org, you can, there's just tons of information on all of this, on all of the advanced directives. So, so that's all I have today about the legal and financial. The next webinar, we're going to talk about the medical insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, who pays for what information and documents you need. All right. So shoot me an email at pat@patthorn.com. I know my name, pat@patthorn.com. Shoot me an email if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll see if I can answer it. And until then, know that there is, let's just get rid of this. Just know that there is help for the journey, and I'm here for you. And just let me know how I can help. Again, pat@patthorn.com. Take care.